The New York Times says it's controversial to say jihadist thought springs from Quran. Yet what we've seen so far is a dress rehearsal for what the jihadis have in their plan. The Times may not know it, but you better. Jihad does not mean writing a love letter. Welcome again to This Week in Jihad with the great David Wood. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, David.
Did you say plan?
Yes, yes.
You think you could slip that one by?
Try to write a poem like it. I challenge you. You will not be able to write one like it.
You're right. I surrender. You win.
Nobody in the entire world can write a poem like it. That is the way you can tell the genuine This Week in Jihad from our legions of imitators.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
And this week's poem, David, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you know, it actually had a topical reference.
Really?
Yes, because it said that the New York Times finds it controversial to say that jihad has to do with Islam. That actually has to do with the obituary for the late, great Hal Lindsey, who passed away last week at the age of 95. Are you familiar with Hal Lindsey, David?
No.
Oh, man. Well, herein lies a tale. Hal Lindsey was the author of a book that came out in 1970 called The Late Great Planet Earth that sold tens of millions of copies. Somebody says we only got to hear half of the poem. Should I do it again before I launch into this story?
Yeah, you have to do it. And keep in mind,
out of the trash.
Yeah, keep in mind that's not you. All you do is you click live. It tells you you're live and you go. But reality does not always line up with what your tech is saying. Sometimes there is a little delay in transmitting it to YouTube and so on. So it's not on you. That's on defective systems. But yeah,
David, I'm actually glad that reality and I don't agree only on this minor thing. Because there are people like the New York Times that we're going to get to where they have such a war with reality that it's the dichotomy between the two is nothing less than staggering. Why did I not get the notification when I asked for it repeatedly, says Heather? Because YouTube hates me. And YouTube, that's why there are also no super chats. So please help us out at Patreon so we can keep going. Anyway, the New York Times, here we go. This is the poem. Try to write one like it, David. The New York Times says it's controversial to say jihadist thought springs from the Quran. Yet what we've seen so far is a dress rehearsal for what the jihadis have in their plan. The Times may not know it, but you better. Jihad does not mean writing a love letter. Back to the trash with that. No.
See, you said plan. You said plan. You could have said jihadis, they love jihad like I love flan.
Well, yeah, you're right. I could have done that. And see, maybe you could write a poem like it at that. Maybe you also are a prophet.
They love jihad like I love the movie Tron.
I don't even know that one. Casablanca is more my
1980s.
Oh, that's way too new for me. Anyway,
get off my lawn with your new films, you young whippersnappers.
Exactly. Now you've got it. All right. So Hal Lindsey, David. Hal Lindsey wrote this book, The Late Great Planet Earth, in 1970. And I was actually a young evangelical Christian at the University of North Carolina in the late 70s and early 80s. This was I was an Orthodox Christian, but at this point I had joined up with evangelical groups, and now I am back happily in Orthodoxy. But in any case, during this little sojourn, I saw that there was a lot of interest, tremendous interest in Hal Lindsey's book. And of course, it wasn't just in my little circle because he sold like 35 million copies of this book. And it said that the second coming was going to happen within a generation of 1968 because the founding of the modern state of Israel, according to his interpretation of Scripture, the founding of the modern state of Israel in 1948 was the kickoff for the end times. And so within a generation of 48, which he generously defined a generation as 40 years, which I think is a little too much. But that put it within up to 1988. And I knew people who were very excited and thought at the beginning of the 80s that by the end of the 80s, the consummation of all things would have been accomplished. So,
Look, Robert. I'm not familiar with that book, but I do remember hearing stuff about when I was a kid that the second coming has been dated and it's going to be coming now in the 80s.
yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that?
That was from Hal Lindsey. And what I think is remarkable about Hal Lindsey's career is that he survived as a public figure after 1988, and people still took him seriously. I don't get that at all because he couldn't have been more spectacularly wrong in his prophecy and or his interpretation of prophecy. And obviously, we're still here. The second coming has not happened. Hal Lindsey was way wrong, but he, even up to the age of 95, earlier this year, he was still active. Now,
Robert,
yes,
I'm doing my calculations here, and just because I miss a decimal point here or there, I mean, come on, Robert. We all make mistakes. You're just going to hold that against someone forever?
yeah,
Robert,
maybe it's
There's a reason when you buy a number 2 pencil, it comes with an eraser on the back. We know we're humans. We make mistakes. Can't hold it over people's head forever.
maybe, yeah, maybe he meant a generation was 400 years and not just 40. But in
Or
any
4
case,
billion, or 4 billion. Who's to say?
so quite, it was kind of off the subject, but I was reading his obituary in the New York Times. It was actually sent to me by somebody who noticed this, and I thought it was remarkable that it was in here. It said, let me find the thing here now. Um, the obituary of Hal Lindsey said, Mr. Lindsey did not shy from controversy. Several years after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, he came under fire for suggesting that radical Islamist thought springs from the Quran, which he said has numerous passages encouraging violence. That's why I put in the poem that the New York Times says it's controversial that jihad has to do with Islam. This was stuck in this obituary for Hal Lindsey. Now,
Wait. So he thought that passages like "fight those who do not believe in Allah," that those actually have something to do with encouraging violence.
yeah, kill them wherever you find them might have something to do with killing people wherever you find them. I mean, where could he have gotten such a crazy notion? Very
Wait,
controversial.
or like 973, wage jihad against the unbelievers and the hypocrites. They think that has something to do with jihad, a command to wage jihad. They think that actually has something to do with jihad.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
oh, and you can't leave out the fact that verses like Surah 4, verse 65 say that Muslims have to obey all the commands of Muhammad, all of Muhammad's decisions, and that if you don't, you're not a real Muslim. And what do we find from Muhammad? Sahih Muslim 30, the Messenger of Allah said, I've been commanded to fight against people so long as they do not declare that there is no God but Allah, and he who professed it was guaranteed the protection of his property and life on my behalf, except for the right, and his affairs rest with Allah. But Muhammad said over and over again, he's been commanded to wage jihad against people, pretty generic term, people, until they say there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. Sahih al-Bukhari 2785, a man came to Allah's messenger and said, guide me to such a deed as equals jihad in reward. He replied, I do not find such a deed. 2787, Allah guarantees that he will admit the mujahid into his case, in his cause into paradise if he is killed. Otherwise, he will return him home safely with rewards and war booty. This goes on and on and on. A single endeavor of fighting in Allah's cause in the afternoon or in the forenoon is better than all the world and whatever is in it. So you just go out and fight one day. It's better than the entire world. And
I'm getting the idea that the New York Times would regard you, David Wood, as controversial.
Yeah, you know who's controversial? This Muhammad guy.
Yeah, yeah. He thinks that jihad has something to do with violence. The New York Times would not be happy. All right, also the big jihad this week, David, of course, is in Syria, where the jihadis that were beaten some years ago have resurged and taken the city of Aleppo, storming the presidential palace of Bashar al-Assad in Aleppo, and screaming Allahu Akbar while they were there, just in case anybody did not know what they were all about. They also took Aleppo International Airport and went into the duty-free shop, smashed bottles of alcohol while screaming Allahu Akbar. And they threatened to behead...
let me correct you. While the camera was on, Robert. when that camera was off, we know these guys are getting wasted. Come on.
I don't know. Well, you're absolutely right. That's actually something that is worth noting, David, that Islam is all about appearances, that it doesn't really involve cultivating genuine virtue. It says that alcohol is terrible, that it is of Satan's handiwork, chapter 5, verse 90 of the Quran, and so on. And really, it's about making sure nobody sees you doing whatever, like eating during Ramadan, or having a sip of whiskey or whatever you may be doing that is against the rules. As long as nobody sees you, you're good.
Oh, and there's this issue that keeps coming up all these times where you'd have a terrorist and they would say, oh, this terrorist really doesn't have anything to do with Islam because look, here he is in a strip club 2 nights before, right? You also have, which I just conveniently read right before we were addressing this topic, but Sahih al-Bukhari, 2787, Allah guarantees that he will admit the mujahid, that's the jihadi, in his cause into paradise if he is killed. It's a guarantee. If you die while fighting for Allah, it is a guaranteed trip to paradise. Yep. So what if 2 days earlier you were in a strip club getting wasted and messing around with strippers?
You got your get out of jail free card.
It's a free pass. It's a free pass. So these guys who know they're going out to wage jihad and so on, they may be smashing these bottles on camera, but we know what they're doing when the cameras are off.
You're smashing 6 bottles, but there are 8 on the shelf. You slip 2 into your kaftan. Who's going to know?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Anyway, as long as nobody sees it. There's a wonderful story. You ever read Sir Richard Burton's personal narrative of a journey to Mecca and Medina from 1852?
No, on account of I'm not a huge nerd.
It's a delightful book. Richard Burton, not Liz Taylor's husband, but an earlier Richard Burton. He wanted to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, but as a Muslim. He didn't want to go as a convert, which he may not have been. It's a little ambiguous as to whether he was really a Muslim at all or not. But he wanted to go and experience it the way an ordinary Muslim would. So he hatched this elaborate plan. He went to Egypt, to Cairo, and he posed as a Pashtun physician. See, because he had studied Arabic, he was fluent in Arabic, but he thought he's still not a native speaker. If there's anything he gets tripped up on, then he can ascribe it to being from Afghanistan, and it's so far away from Egypt in 1852, nobody's going to know. Mm-hmm. So it was a foolproof plan, and all these people were coming to him. He was practicing medicine, kind of improvising and using folk remedies and such, and he was a respected member of the community until this Albanian Ottoman soldier came to Cairo on furlough, and they're chatting in the place where they're both staying, and the guy's got a bottle of booze, and they get drunk together, and they would have gotten away with it except the Albanian started getting loud and yelling that he would fight anybody in Cairo, in Alexandria as well, and beat them. and
He would.
yelling and screaming, completely out of control. And so the next day, the whole city was abuzz with the rumors that this pious doctor from Afghanistan had gotten drunk, and how terrible it was. He actually had to leave the city. Anyway, he makes his pilgrimage to Mecca. It's a very interesting book. One other thing I'll say about it before we get back to the jihad is Burton is in Arabia on his way to Mecca, and he's got these Arab guides, and he sees these monkeys that he's never seen the like before. He's a 19th century Englishman. He has a very great interest in... Yes, they were.
Were they stoning an adulteress?
No, but he asked the Arabs what kind of monkeys they were, because he didn't recognize the species, and they said, "Oh, those are the Jews."
There you go. That would have been my number 2 guess.
Yeah. Great book, anyway. When you become a colossal nerd, be sure to pick up Admiral Sir Richard Burton's personal narrative of a journey to Mecca and Medina, a pilgrimage. Anyway, you can get the idea. I might not have the title exactly right. It's one of those long 19th century titles.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I could either read the book or I could just pull that stunt myself.
Good idea. We already got your video from inside the Kaaba.
I will be Sheikh Daoud Hesheb, and I shall visit and I shall take the pilgrimage.
This is going to be great. I look forward to the videos.
But I shall go back to the earlier days of Islam when the black stone was used as a toilet.
Yikes. You remind me of remember the Carmatians?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, yeah.
Keeping up with yeah, exactly. Anyway, okay. We got more jihad here. Let's get serious, shall we? In California, a guy named Deya Abdelhadi Halaiba.
Did you say Dehya Al-Kalbi?
Close. Deya Abdelhadi Halaiba, who is described by the New York Post as a crazed New York man. I think there are other descriptions you could give, but there he is. You can see him on the screen now, in the middle of being crazed. He showed up at a police station in Santa Monica, California, and he said that he needed some help. He pressed the call button outside the station, said he needed a policeman. And the policeman responds and says, "What's in your jacket? I'm kind of nervous with your hand in your jacket like that." And Halaiba says, "Oh, you're nervous?" Pulls out an 8-inch knife and stabs him. Where do you think he stabbed him, David?
Based on Islam's teachings and everything we've ever seen, I'll go with the neck.
You are correct, sir, for $100. And not only did he stab the policeman in the neck, but investigators are now looking into his mental health history. Because,
Shocker.
Of course, what else could he be but crazy?
This just in from the New York Times. Robert Spencer has controversially claimed that a jihadi stabbing someone in the neck could possibly have something to do with the Quran's command to strike at their necks.
Yep, it's very controversial. You're right. They would not like this. And I'll tell you, over in Britain, our friend Keir Starmer, he has had enough. And recently, Tahir Ali, who is a member of the British Parliament for the Labour Party, he called on Keir Starmer to introduce measures that would essentially be blasphemy laws that would outlaw the desecration of religious texts, which, of course, you do on a routine basis. Do you want to desecrate a religious text for us?
Your wish is my command. Here's one. Is this a religious text? Oh, yes, it is. So what you're saying is this guy, this British MP, is calling on Keir Starmer to arrest people who do this, which I do on almost a daily basis in one form or another. They're saying this would be outlawed. Keir Starmer would be showing up with his stupid stormtroopers to throw me in prison.
That's right. Because Tahir Ali said this, and so people were asking Starmer about it in public, in Parliament, and he said, "We're committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including Islamophobia in all its forms." So he would not, even when asked point blank, he would not rule out blasphemy laws in Britain.
Yeah, Robert, just imagine that situation. You have a Muslim MP, and he's sitting there in Parliament saying, "Hey, can we all agree that we need to do something about blasphemy?" And it's obvious. He says, "Oh, against Abrahamic religions." It's always clear he means one Abrahamic religion, because if you wanted to rule out speaking against Judaism and Christianity, bye-bye Quran and Hadith and Prophet Muhammad, they'd be gone, right?
Yep.
So you can't just have these blanket commands. Well, you can, but you just don't. You only enforce them when it happens to be something critical of Islam. But just imagine a sane world, Robert, where an MP, Muslim MP, raises his hand and says, "Yes, can we have Sharia blasphemy laws to stop people from criticizing and mocking my religion and so on?" Just imagine a sane world with a sane prime minister who said, "Look, you have every right to object and to complain and to respond when people mock your prophet or desecrate your book, but we are not going to undermine free speech, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression for your religion. You have to learn to deal with it. You don't have to like it. You have to learn that other people do not have to obey your religion. Other people who do not follow your religion do not have to obey the rules of your religion." With that said, if you don't like what someone is doing, if you don't like someone mocking your prophet, mock them in return, do something like that. But under no circumstances are we going to change the laws of our country to bring them in line with the ramblings of a 7th century Arabian caravan robber. Not happening. Next question. That's how you do it, Keir Starmer. Instead of, "Oh, yes, we will. Oh, yes, we do need to do something about Islamophobia." Freaking coward.
Yeah, if he had any sense and he had any desire to preserve Britain as a free society, then every time somebody called for blasphemy laws in Britain, he would do exactly what you do. Tear a page out of the Quran and eat it.
Yep. Yeah, do that and just say, "Nope, guys, that's the line. We're not crossing here. Don't try it. Never going to happen." The fact that they are extremely sympathetic shows, yeah, you're pretty doomed. You're pretty doomed over there, guys.
Yeah, they're in bad shape. Germany also. This is on the ground. Michael Sturzenberger, who is a warrior for freedom and was stabbed by a jihadi several months ago while he was warning in Germany, as he often does, about the dangers of Sharia and mass Muslim migration for the possibility of the transformation of German society. And even though he himself was the victim and he was stabbed, he was just fined by the Hamburg Regional Court for inciting hatred against Muslims.
And I mean, we literally mentioned it like 5 minutes ago, but the level of hypocrisy here. You're saying, hey, there's lots of guys who don't respect our laws and so on, and you keep bringing them in, and they keep doing things like raping women and so on, and honor killings and so on. And hey, maybe we shouldn't be bringing in so many people who believe things like these, and you can actually quote them, and that would be inciting hatred against Muslims. And you say, okay, well, if incitement of hatred against Muslims can involve just, criticizing the teachings of Muhammad and so on, or pointing out some of these problems with immigration and so on, then what do you call the end will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are crying out, "Hey, Muslim, there's a Jew behind me. Come and kill him." What do you do with that? Oh, no, that's fine. That's part of their religion.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the thing.
what do you do
just
with
quote them and you're
Jews and
inciting
Christians?
hatred.
Yeah, what do you do with Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures? Muslims are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind. What do you do with these things? What do you do with fight those who do not believe in Allah? What do you do with I've been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger? What do you do with any of these things? Oh, no, no, no. Who are we to judge? Isn't that amazing? A Muslim can walk out and say, I'm going to kill you all. I'm going to slaughter you all in the name of Allah. And they'll say, oh, that's fine. That's fine. He's a Muslim. And you say, no, don't do that. And they say, you hateful bigot. How dare you? How dare you attack that man and incite hatred against him? Bunch of lunatics, man.
Yeah, you're right. And it's been going on for years. I remember years ago, the UN passed a resolution calling on nations, member states, to criminalize incitement to religious hatred. And there was actually a move by some Muslim groups to get them to make a specific exception for the Quran, because they knew the Quran's full of religious hatred. The Quran calls unbelievers the most vile of created beings and all that. So they had to get it ruled out explicitly to keep the law they wanted to shut everybody else up with from being used against them.
Yeah, it's so absolutely insane to me. Like, I prefer freedom of speech. I'm free to mock your position. You're free to mock my position. I'm okay with that. If you wanted to make a rule, hey, no one gets to say any mean things about other people and so on, I'm not a fan of that. However, if you wanted to do it, at least be consistent with it. That would be one thing, right? That would be one thing. If you said, okay, we're going to make it a rule. You can't call for violence against other people, and anything that calls for violence against other people is going to be banned. If you're going to do that, fine. Ban the Quran and the Hadith instantly, like instantly. And then I'll think you actually mean what you say. But they never, ever do. It's, yes, we're going to condemn and make illegal anything that calls for violence or anything that speaks ill of another religious group or something like that. But anything having to do with Islam gets a free pass. And you can't even point out that Islam has all these things that we say we're condemning. You can't even point out that Islam calls for the very things that we say we're condemning. You can't do that because then we'll throw you in jail. We'll lock you up for pointing out that we're hypocrites. That's the problem. If you were going to do it, at least be consistent. They never are. Not once. Show me once in the history of humanity where the people say, oh yes, we're going to have these blasphemy laws and we're just going to apply them and you can't hurt anyone's feelings. Show me one time where that was applied consistently. Never. You can't, because it never is.
Here's another instance of what you're talking about. In Germany again, a judge gave a light sentence to a Syrian migrant who had raped a 15-year-old girl. And the guy got, all he had to do was get a suspended sentence and pay his victim 3,000 euros. And the judge not only gave him the light sentence, but he told the rapist, you are well on your way to becoming a completely normal citizen here.
Yeah, just rape a few more, then you'll be right up there.
So this German guy sees this, and he says publicly that the judge is obviously mentally disturbed. And he got a 5,000 euro fine for insulting the judge. So he got a stiffer sentence than a guy who raped a 15-year-old girl.
So just to be clear, on the new moral, ethical hierarchy of crimes in Germany, raping someone, it's about like here, but criticizing a judge for not handing out a more strict penalty for raping someone, that's kind of up here on how bad it is. So yep. Raping a woman. See, that's just becoming normal. And that's why this guy's on a path to becoming a normal German citizen. It's just accepted as normal now that if you're an immigrant, you can go around raping all the German girls you want. So he's well on his way to becoming a normal German. But criticizing Isn't it interesting? It's the same thing. It's different, but it's the same thing that's going on in the UK, where you can have people marching through the streets and burning things to the ground and screaming on behalf of terrorist groups and so on. But if you step out there and go, "Hey, what? I thought we weren't allowed to do some of this stuff. Why do they get to do it?" Then they throw you in prison for 2 years
Mhm.
for objecting. It looks like that's what we got here. If you say, "Hey, you should be given more than a slap on the wrist for raping a girl," you're in trouble. You're in trouble in Germany. Gotta love the impact that Islam has on societies.
Yeah, well, that leads us to the next one. They're in big trouble in France as well, of course. And in France right now,
Didn't
Brahim
their gov- didn't
Chnina,
their didn't their
what's
government
that?
collapse or something today?
Yeah, their government collapsed, but Brahim Chnina is on trial. Now, Brahim Chnina is the father of the little girl who was in class with Samuel Paty. And Samuel
The girl who
Paty was,
lied.
yeah, she lied and said that he was showing Muhammad cartoons and so on. And then Samuel Paty was beheaded by a Muslim outside the school who thought that he had committed blasphemy. Now, what's interesting is that this 13-year-old girl, she said in court to his family, "I know it's hard to hear, but I wanted to apologize. I wanted to apologize sincerely. I'm sorry for destroying your life. I apologize for my lie that brought us all back here. Without me, no one would be here." Now, this is it's a heartbreaking story, but it all comes down to the fact that she had been suspended from school for 2 days and thought that her parents would be angry. And so she went to her father and said, "I'm not going to school because he's showing Islamophobic cartoons of Muhammad." And so it was all just to cover for herself to keep from getting in trouble, which reminded me, do you remember Yasmin Suwaid? Yasmin Suwaid in 2017 was
Oh, wait,
a
wait. Is that in New York?
exactly.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. She's on the subway.
Mhm.
She needed to make an excuse, so she said she'd been harassed.
She said that on a crowded subway train, she was wearing her hijab. A couple of guys wearing MAGA hats, which you see on the New York subway all the time, of course.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
came and pulled off her hijab and laughed at her, made fun of her, mocked Islam, and the
They said,
whole
they said,
subway
"This
car.
MAGA country, Muslim girl, go back to where you came from." That's what they said.
Yep, and the whole
Yep.
subway car, they sat there and did nothing, and nobody even took any video.
Very shameful.
But it was just that she was out with her boyfriend. She didn't want to get in trouble with her father. So here we have two major Islamophobic incidents. One that got international headlines and all kinds of hand-wringing about Islamophobia, calls for restrictions on the freedom of speech, and another that actually resulted in the murder of a man. And both of them came from Muslim girls who were afraid they were going to get in trouble with their fathers.
And think about the parallel, Robert, to places like Pakistan, where it's a bit worse, but it's the same idea. Hey, I don't like this, or we're having a disagreement, or I need to do something here. Okay, hey, this guy just ripped up a Quran and peed on it. That's what he did. Yeah, he did it. I saw it. And they form a mob and murder the guy. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's death by false accusation of blasphemy. It is an instant way to commit murder and to get away with it. And this goes back to the Muslim sources themselves. You recall the story of a man who brutally murdered his slave girl, who was also the mother of two of his children. But he brutally murdered his slave girl, stabbed her to death. They found the body. Muhammad said, "Who did this? Who did this?" And the guy stepped forward and said, yeah, but Muhammad, she wouldn't stop talking trash about you.
Oh.
And she kept making fun of you. And I told her stop, and she wouldn't. So I stabbed her to death. Muhammad said, "Oh, okay. Free to go then. Free to go. Carry on. Carry on." But what was that? I mean, think about this. The guy's the only witness of what this woman is saying. So you can.
Yeah.
So what's this mean? It means in an Islamic country, I could just go murder my wife because she messed up my falafel or something like that, and say, "Hey, you just murdered your wife." Well, no, she was talking trash about Muhammad. Oh, okay, free pass. Then Muhammad said, "Give you a free pass," and here you have it. Here you have it in Western nations. If all else fails, just say, someone's attacking my religion. Get the guy killed. Problem solved.
That's right. All right, we got another one that's sort of similar. This one's out of Northern Ireland, and it's great. It's from Belfast. Ziad Kaula, who is 24, he is charged with raping a 15-year-old boy. Now where does that come from, David? What's that all about?
They do have well, there's a couple things. So you do have this odd obsession with these boys in paradise and things like that. And but it's weird. It's this thing. I know a woman who had like a boarding house from people from Pakistan and so on, and but she would talk. She's an older woman,
Hmm.
but she would talk to them and so on. And she said, and eventually you could get them to share, share about their problems and stuff like that. And one guy was talking about being molested when he was young, and then I asked others to share, and everyone there, she goes, every guy who comes in there was molested by older men when they were
Yep.
young. They said they consider it as long as you haven't grown a beard yet, as long as you haven't started developing facial hair, they don't think of it as gay, and they just think they can do whatever they want and stuff. And so just normal practice.
So this guy, and I think you will find this familiar as well, Ziad Kaula, who is a Palestinian Arab asylum seeker, he denies it all and says that the teenager is the one who made advances on him.
Mm.
And anyway, in yet another horrible aspect of this horrible story, he has been freed on bail, and he is allowed to live freely in Belfast, which is great. And so here again, we have stupid infidels without any awareness of what they're doing. Let's see here. What else we got? Oh, this was interesting. Let me see. I think I have the pictures of these guys. Maybe not. Well, anyway. Some clerics from Al-Azhar, David, went to China. Abbas Shuman, the Secretary General of Al-Azhar's Council of Elders in Cairo, he went to visit Beijing and met with the leader of the China Islamic Association. And in there, he said that while he was there, he said Al-Azhar supports China's fight against Muslim radicalism, extremism, and separatism, which is how the Chinese Communist Party refers to its repression of the Uyghur Muslims. Now, why would Al-Azhar go and endorse the persecution of Muslims in China?
That's something that I don't know if you have a different reason, but as far as what I've seen, you just have all these countries that want to be in good with China, and they're quite happy to throw their fellow Muslims under the bus if it helps them economically in some way.
Yeah, that's basically it. The principle is that you do not wage jihad if you have no chance of winning and the enemy is more than twice your strength. So the fact that no Muslim organizations around the world are making any significant protest about the Uyghurs, but whining incessantly about Islamophobia in the West, is only an indication that they see China as strong and the West as weak. And they
Yeah,
think they can defeat the West.
yeah, that's been an ongoing thing. Hey, we understand that people in the West will fall for this. The Chinese government will not fall for it. Therefore, why even try? And there have been a couple random protests here and there and stuff over the years, but they never last. They'll go out and protest the Chinese embassy one day, and then you never hear about it again for another 3 or 4 years, and then they'll show up again at a local Chinese embassy, stand outside for some just to show that they're activists and so on. But yeah, I mean, and this is a place where they've had like, was it like 1 million Uyghurs and so on that they put in actual concentration camps, and there are stories that all these people are brought in to like rape the women and stuff like that. You can pay to go in there and rape women, and they torture them and torture them regularly, and just they eventually let them out. And by that time, all the people do is go get addicted to drugs because they're so messed up and traumatized and so on. And nope, sorry. Complaining about Jews, that might actually work. Complaining about China, not going to help.
There you go. Meanwhile, this is one of the reasons why they see the West as so weak. Here's a story out of Sweden. Two Afghan asylum seekers with connections to the terrorist group ISIS-K, that is the Khorasan province of the Islamic State, the Central Asia Islamic State group, are on trial in Germany, suspected of plans to carry out a terrorist attack against Sweden's parliament and kill at least 10 people. That was what one of the Islamic State jihadis said, that they thought that they could open fire in the parliament, kill at least 10 before they got stopped. And these guys are asylum seekers, David. They are refugees. They are fleeing persecution in Afghanistan and coming to the West and showing their gratitude in Sweden.
Yeah, Robert, I have to say, so just imagine a scenario. Imagine a scenario. Let's suppose the president of the United States is speaking in some auditorium or something like that. And so let's suppose Joe Biden is going to be speaking in an auditorium. And so the Secret Service is doing careful checks on people as they're coming through. They're putting them through metal detectors. They're putting them through scanners. They're using the wand and so on to check everyone. Suppose all of a sudden the thing's starting and a guy pulls out an AK-47 right in the middle. This guy had been through all the security checks and he pulls out an AK-47. That doesn't just tell you that there's one guy in there who wants to harm the president. That tells you that your entire systems for checking people are massively screwed up. They're massively defective. And what does that mean? It means that for all you know, every last person in there has an AK-47 because the system you use to check people is defective enough that a guy can get through with an AK-47.
Yep.
All right. Well, if you're a country and you're supposed to be protecting your primary goal is your primary job in theory is to be protecting your citizens. And if you're just bringing all these guys in, they're seeking asylum. They're seeking asylum. Wait a minute. They're trying to slaughter us in the name of Allah. And they're actually part of ISIS. These guys that we let in as asylum seekers are taking orders from ISIS. That should tell everyone that your government's entire system for vetting people who come into your country is massively defective. And that, guess what? Your government is massively defective because it's your government that decided how you're going to check these people. And your government is letting actual jihadis who want to slaughter you in the name of Allah into your country. I'd say get a brand new government with a brand new security system in place.
One would think, but it's not on the horizon. Meanwhile, we have our friend Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey. He's our NATO ally. He's our friend.
He sure is.
Yes. Okay, you're going to love this. He gave a speech in Ankara at the 7th Religious Council, whatever that is, and he said this: "The West's progress, built on blood, tears, massacres, and exploitation, has temporarily overtaken the human-centered civilization of the East. A day will come when this era of progress, which excludes the sacred and humanity, will close. As Western civilization collapses with great clamor, our human-centered and divinely inspired civilization will rise again, stronger than ever."
This is seen this over and over again, and I've said it a million times, Robert, that after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, you had a lot of Muslims and a lot of Muslim nations thinking, this is not the way things are supposed to go. We're supposed to be on top. They're not. We're supposed to be more powerful. We're not. They're more powerful. And they've just blown past us, and now we don't even have our caliphate anymore. We lost. We need to modernize. We need to change and we need to adapt to their way of doing things and so on. So you had this movement, this push in Iran and Afghanistan and so on. Look at pictures of Iran and Afghanistan from the 1960s. It looked like a Western nation. Mm-hmm. But then you had the suggestion, no, this is only temporary. Allah is testing us. Allah is testing our resolve and so on. Or he's punishing us for not being forceful enough in imposing Sharia, and therefore he's punishing us. But if we just become more devout and more extreme, if we just crack down even more, killing apostates, getting rid of any sort of hypocrisy or rebellion, then Allah will bless us to take over the world. So you get the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Sunni Islam, you get the You get the Ayatollahs taking over in Iran and so on, but you get this push to the other interpretation. And yeah, Erdogan is apparently trying to convince people, yep, this Western stuff is only temporary. But it is funny that they're the barbarians and the savages. They're the ones who spread things with violence, as opposed to us, sophisticated people in the East, sophisticated Muslims. We were just sitting around pondering the universe, doing science and stuff, and these barbarians came along and started saying, "We strong, you weak. We beat you. We beat you. You no beat us. We beat you." And sadly, these barbarians and savages were able to do that for a while, but the tide will be turning. The tide will be turning, and we will be able to get back to spreading our brilliant knowledge and civilization around the world. What do we want? Civilization. What does everyone need? Civilization. It's what we're here to bring. Me and AP just watched a video about that, about a Muslim. This is a Muslim in Dearborn. He's saying, do you know that they wipe with paper? They wipe with paper. Well, these are barbarians. We're here to civilize them. We're here to civilize them. So we actually went through Muhammad's commands about wiping yourselves with an odd number of stones and so on.
Much so more civilized. Hygienic. Yes.
But you got to pee while squatting too. Remember, you got to pee while squatting. If you don't pee while squatting, then most of the punishment of the grave is for urinating improperly, according to Muhammad. So,
yes, or having your pants too long.
That's true.
Yep, because the drags in hellfire your hem if it's too low.
Well, glad they're here to civilize us, Robert.
Yes, but yeah, it's quite a bit of projection here when he says the West's progress built on blood, tears, massacres, and exploitation. Like there's the history of jihad. Of course, he's counting on people in the West not knowing the history of jihad, and unfortunately that's true to a tremendous degree. Anyway, meanwhile, we haven't said anything so far about the jihad in Israel, against Israel, which is continuing to go on. And this is a Flash Gordon ray gun that was 99 cents at Corvettes, probably around the time that I was 10 years old or so. But anyway, I was reminded...
That was the theme song from the movie. I remember the movie.
The Palestinian Arabs are having some trouble because people are starting to catch on that they've been lying about the casualty figures in Gaza and realizing that there's no genocide happening there. And so now they have a new explanation. And that's why I have the Flash Gordon ray gun here to grace our program tonight, because they said that the Israelis have a magic death beam that completely vaporizes dead bodies so that there's no trace of them left.
No evidence.
So they can say 40,000 people are killed, and then the actual objective observers come in and say there's only 5,000 people killed or whatever. And they say, but they vaporized the others. They're gone. No trace.
No trace.
Even their identification, even any sign that they ever existed, was erased. It's that good of a death beam.
Yeah, guys. So this is the story that I've seen. This one. This is the story that's circulating on social media. Is that Jews have developed a weapon that hits you and completely evaporates your body. That was the word that was used in the one I saw. Evaporates the entire body, no trace. So you can just make people disappear. And it's a situation where you want to make fun of it, but I mean, to the Muslims who take that seriously, if I wanted to talk to Muslims who are actually taking this seriously, oh no, the Jews have a ray gun that can make us just completely disappear, I would say something along the lines of, okay, if you believe they have the technology to not only blow your testicles off at will, which they've done, if you believe that, so we know they have that kind of technology. If you believe they actually have technology way beyond that and can just vaporize you without a trace, would be my advice to tread lightly. I might run my mouth at my neighbor, but if I think that dude has a ray that can evaporate me, I'm not saying one word to that dude. And if I do say a word, it'll be, hello, sir. Yes, good day. Good to see you, sir. Anything you say, sir.
Yeah. Well, they
I would.
just
I mean,
haven't thought this through.
I would have thrown in the towel after we can blow your balls off at will. I would have given up after that. But now they can just vaporize you at will.
Yep. And apparently any sign that you ever existed.
Powerful. Even all the paperwork, birth
Yep.
certificates, all of that. It vaporizes it even vaporizes people's memories of you. No one will even remember that you existed. It wipes out all memory of you. And so the sad part is that we've heard that Jews have done this to 10 billion Palestinians. You don't even remember them, do you? You don't remember them. You don't remember those 10 billion Palestinians. You don't remember why the Jews used their ray on you.
That's it. Meanwhile, speaking of the jihad against Israel, the UN is in some hot water, although, of course, who's going to call them to account is the problem. The UN Relief and Works Agency, or whatever it's called, UNRWA, which is the UN Refugee, anyway, whatever it stands for, I don't know. But it's the Refugee Service for the Palestinians. The whole world has a refugee agency at the UN, and then the Palestinians have their own special dedicated one. And they run schools in Gaza. And the schools in Gaza have been discovered to have teachers who are members of Hamas. And the curriculum is full of, here's why you should kill Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And so this young man is a graduate of the UNRWA schools.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interviewed by UN Watch not long ago. And they said, what is the solution for Jerusalem? The solution for Jerusalem is jihad in the path of Allah. Who are your heroes, your role models? They are the resistance fighters and all other parts of our life, which are, of course, our Prophet, Muhammad, our God, the people of the resistance and jihad. Those are our role models in life. Does the school teach you anything about peace? And the kid says, of course not. There's no peace in our schools, of course, especially not in the schools for the refugees. If we just take the UNRWA school, it's all about the right of return. It's all about our returning to our land, the land they took. It's never going to be about peace between us and that state. Do you want to become a martyr? Be a martyr? Every young Palestinian man, any young Palestinian man, they all hope to be martyred. They really want to be martyrs. So that's what they teach them at the UN school.
And what could go wrong? You know what, Robert? So they're teaching them this right of return instead of just teaching them, guys, you live in a world and the best thing you can do is build up your family and build up your community and so on and live the best life you can in this world and accept the reality that you do not control Israel. Just accept that reality. But they won't, and that's not what they're being taught, and that's not what the UN organization is teaching them. It's teaching, yes, you must continue learning to fight and learning to stab and learning to kill Jews, and then you can get your land back because it's been stolen from you. This all ties together, Robert. The most important lesson Muslims can learn in the world today is the word no. Should have been when that MP said, Prime Minister Starmer, can we get some blasphemy laws here in the UK? Oh, sure, we can work on that. Yes, we should work on. No, should have been no.
Yep.
And ask you to clarify. No. No debate. No, we're not debating. No. The answer is no. Do not argue. We are not entertaining this. No. And the same thing. Well, we're gonna go kill the Jews together. No. But we're gonna no. But they no. That's it. It's if you teach them that one word, the best thing governments of the world can do in the world today to not just help themselves but also to help Muslims is to teach them the word no. Because they don't do it. They never. Oh, we don't want to hurt their feelings by telling them no. They can't do all these things.
Well, unfortunately, just the opposite is happening. This guy is Kareem Abu Zaid, and he is an Islamic scholar in Colorado. And he was recently, let's see here. He said that The prophecy about Islam entering every home is almost realized. And he was asked by a caller on this show that he did about the authenticity of the hadith about Muslims conquering Constantinople and then Rome. And he said, yes, we're going to conquer the Vatican. And Rome refers not only to that, but to Europe, which includes Italy and the Vatican. And America will be gone. And he's there in Colorado. He's not in Pakistan.
Isn't this amazing, Robert? I mean, going back to the issue of hypocrisies. Yes, we're going to conquer you. We're going to conquer you. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill all the blasphemers. We're going to kill all the apostates. We're going to take your women. We're going to rape them. The authority of Islam will be over always. He. Now, respect us in return. And you go, no, what are you talking about? This is what I think of that. This is what I think of that in return. That's what I think of that in return. And there's, no, how dare you? All we said was we want to destroy your entire civilization and your religion and take your women and kids and make them our sex slaves, and you won't respect us in return. What's wrong with you? Robert, I just said, no, you do not get to be saying the kinds of things you say. You do not get to treat people the way you admit you want to treat them and demand respect for your fake prophet in return. The answer is no. Here's what you get in return.
It's, I don't know the nutritional value, David. I'm not sure.
It's low carb.
That's true.
Keto friendly.
Yes. I don't know that there's much protein, though. There's not a whole lot of substance in that.
High fiber, though.
Yes. All right, so we got also Kansas City. Not only Colorado, but in Kansas City, there's Muhammad Tarif. And Muhammad Tarif recently was preaching a sermon, a Friday sermon. And he said, "My dear respected brothers, know that you were created in this world in a nation that should be a leading nation. Allah says in the Quran, you are a nation that was brought to people. You are the best nation. Why? Because you call for that which is good. You encourage others to do good."
Killing. Rape, killing. See, we're good.
Yeah, well, that's funny because he goes on to say, "O Allah, annihilate the criminal Zionists, those of whom are Zionists and those who are not. O Allah, count them, kill them one by one, and do not spare a single one of them, for they are no match for you. O Allah, allow us to torment them with our hands, humiliate them, grant us victory over them, and heal the hearts of the believers."
Am I losing my mind here? He's talking about how powerful. Hang on, hold on. Sorry, mouthful of Quran. You talk about how powerful they are, and how Allah is so powerful, and so on.
He's talking about, that the Muslims are the best of people. He quotes chapter 3, verse 110 of the Quran. You are the best of people on earth, adjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. He also refers to chapter 9, verse 14 and 15, which says, fight them, and Allah will punish them by your hands and heal the hearts of the believers. That is, if you're feeling bad, you get therapy in an Islamic context. Go fight the unbelievers, and you'll
Jihad therapy. Jihad therapy. That's what they call it.
That's it.
Man, I'm feeling bad here, Robert. You know what I need? A little jihad therapy.
That's right. You don't
just
need
go stab a few necks, and I'm feeling good now. Way better than Prozac or whatever people take.
Well, it actually works in a demonic way. Have you noticed how many jihadis, when they're apprehended, you see them smiling and they look satisfied, they look happy, because they believe that they've pleased their God. And that they're going to get a place in paradise.
Guaranteed. Mm-hmm. I now get to spend eternity deflowering virgins.
There you go.
Perfectly functioning moral compasses.
So this guy, when he says annihilate the criminal Zionists, oh Allah, count them, kill them one by one. In the first place, that kill them one by one, I've started to keep track of that. That's a very common prayer. And I don't know, have you ever found the source? I have not been able to track down the source of this prayer.
Which one is it?
kill them one by one. But it comes up over and over that Muslim clerics pray that Allah, particularly the Jews, would kill the Jews one by one. And they use this specific language. So if anybody out there knows the source of that very common prayer in Islam, I'd love to see it. In the meantime, though, the thing is, when he calls on Allah to kill the Zionists, it must be understood that because of that verse that he also refers to, where Allah will punish the unbelievers by the hands of the believers, that's a direct call for violence. He's not just asking Allah to reach down with his divine hand and kill them. He's asking Muslims to execute the wrath of Allah. So really, it's a shame this kind of thing is going on in Kansas City, but it's only to be expected.
I'm leaving Kansas City. Kansas City, I won't stay. All right.
All right. Well, anyway, there's always more jihad, ladies and gentlemen, but there's only so much that we can. Yes?
I'm just saying, looks like we're going to be having a lot to cover here. I mean, all the stuff going on with Iran, the stuff in Syria, Afghanistan now saying women can't even train to become nurses and so on. Looks like we're going to have our work cut out for us here all through 2025, Robert.
I'm afraid so. But, incidentally, in Afghanistan, when they implement that, the women will be dying at high rates. And then, of course, another generation, we won't have any Taliban. So there's always a silver lining. Anyway, that's it for now. There will likely be more jihad next week. And God willing, we will be back to cover it. Until then, as always, pray, hope, and do not worry.